So I'm here today with Dave King, who is the founder of a Cambridge-based startup called Exaptive. And you guys are the epitome of what it is to be a data-driven company. So can you tell us a little bit about Exaptive?
Thanks, yeah. The mission behind Exaptive is actually said in its name. We believe in this idea of exaptation, which is when things that originally evolved for one purpose get serendipitously co-opted for something else and thrive there. And this has happened in biology, but I think it's really a good model for what happens in the world of innovation and data science, which is a lot of those big aha moments are when something that somebody thought only applied in one context, they realize it actually applies in these other contexts. So the mission behind Exaptive is how do we use software and technology to help people have good ideas? We have a lot of examples of technology being used to connect people to different things, to connect people to cabs, to connect people to music they didn't know about, to help people connect with dates and possible spouses.
Right.
But what we really want to do with Exaptive is use technology to help people connect with new ideas and to connect with other people who are having ideas that they can have some synergy with.
Yeah, that sounds great. And so we're here today at the Boston Data Festival, which is an ODSC event. And I was lucky enough to catch your talk, which was very well received. So can you tell us a little bit about your talk this morning?
Well, I tried to put in a bunch of high-level ideas in the talk. One of the ideas was that as data scientists, we're working with sort of different building blocks of the puzzle. Some people are working with data, some people are working with algorithms, some people are working with visualizations. And one of the things I wanted to convey in the talk is that we need to think about these pieces coming together in the context of an application, and an application that facilitates an end user's cognitive process. And that cognitive process is not linear. We're not just looking for the needle in a haystack. What we're doing is we're narrowing in on something, broadening out, narrowing in, and sort of asking new questions along the way. And so, the first concept in the talk was, as software developers, as statisticians, as data scientists, how do we create applications that can facilitate this sort of iterative cognitive process?
Right, yeah.
And then, the second concept was something I'm really passionate about, which is the idea that we have lots of social networks in the world, but what I'm interested in is can we turn those into cognitive networks? And I think that's part of what you're accomplishing here with these sorts of conferences, bringing people together, so that they can think together. And we do that a lot in the physical world with events like this. How can we do that better in the virtual world?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And another kind of key point I think that a lot of people set up and paid attention to was when you start talking about big data. As you said yourself, there's been a big focus on big data, so to speak.
Yeah.
But now people are realizing, how does one make big data small? And can you elaborate on that point a bit?
Yeah, sure. I think, from a technological perspective, we get excited about big data because it's like, wow, we can process terabytes and petabytes and all this. But I think it's sort of important to remember that, what are we doing that for? What we're doing that for is to take a very complex data landscape that's very big, but distill it down into information about those data. And that information is smaller, right? And then we want to go a step further and we say, so now that we have some information, how do we actually turn that into knowledge that can drive some decisions? And, I think of that act as sort of using big data to make data smaller. There's an example where the Canadian government was looking at immigration and unemployment and education levels, and they were trying to understand how their immigrant population sort of contributed to their economy and what they could do to facilitate it. So they sort of assumed that the higher the level of education, the lower the unemployment. And
as one would, yeah.
Makes sense. So they collected the data, and what they found is that in the immigrant population that had PhDs, they had a 50% unemployment rate, which just shocked them, right?
Right.
And I like this example because that's the data. There was a lot of data there that suggested that, but so what? What do you do with that? What's the information, right? So when they dug into that, what they found is that what was driving that is when Canada would give a certain type of visa to, let's say, bring a PhD scientist over to teach at a university. That PhD scientist would come over with their spouse, and if you have a PhD, there's a very good chance that your husband or wife has a PhD.
Right.
But that person wouldn't get a visa. So basically, every time they were bringing over, some highly educated person to work, they were sort of stranding another highly educated person without the ability to work.
Yeah, no one would. Yeah,
and no one would really think about this. And I think, but what's great is that there's the leap of you can have a bunch of numbers that tell you something, but you need to sort of distill it down. And I think you don't stop there because I think the bigger question is, well, so what? What do you do in that situation?
Right.
And so what Canada decided to do is anyone that gets a certain type of visa, their significant other, their spouse, would get a companion work visa, no paperwork to fill out, not a difficult process. They just streamline the whole thing. And it had a noticeable effect on their economy. And so, I think this is a great example of where you start with a bunch of data, but the goal is to really distill it down into something actionable.
And make it actionable, exactly, yeah. That's great. And speaking of actionable, I did see a demo of your Exaptive platform. That looked, knowing a bit about data viz myself and how difficult it is to wire a visualization to the back end, you made it look very easy. Can you talk about your Exaptive platform?
Thanks. Yeah, the idea behind the platform is to provide a very open and combinatorial environment for data scientists and analysts to engage in what I like to call productive play. I think that the whole point in technology is to create tools that lower barriers, and those barriers allow for productive play that lead to new things. So what we did with Exaptive is we created this language agnostic system that lets you bring in data objects, algorithmic components, and visualizations in whatever framework you want. Everyone's very excited about D3.
Right.
If you want to build D3 visualizations, you can build D3 visualizations. But if you want to use 3.js, WebGL...
Oh, cool. So it's very open.
It's completely open. Likewise, on the algorithmic layer, one algorithm might be really well suited for Python, another might be R, another...
That's very impressive,
PHP. So the idea was to create something that allowed these different components to be abstracted in such a way that they could plug and play together. Right. And then I think most importantly was to make it an ecosystem where developers could add their own components. So just like, Wikipedia really revolutionized encyclopedias by allowing people to add their own content.
Exactly, yeah.
It wasn't a closed system. What we're trying to do with Exaptive is allow data scientists to add their own components and allow those things to take on a bit of a life of their own, because what I find really exciting about data science today is that the innovations that are being created by the data scientists that have huge yields in particular domains are usually fairly domain agnostic. Machine vision can be applied everywhere from Google face recognition in photographs to anti-terrorism to radiology to try and recognize tumor signatures, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so what we're trying to do with Exaptive is create this combinatorial environment so people can invent the things that they're good at, and other people can take those things and use them in completely different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes absolute sense. You're a data scientist doing feature selection. You never just do one pass at it. You're a software engineer. You iterate over it. The first version of your code is never the best. So I think it's a great platform. So key question, how do data scientists and others kind of get their hands on this platform?
Well, go onto our website. It's exaptive.com. There's a bunch of information there. You can see some videos. We've got a blog that has a whole bunch of these ideas that we've been talking about. And you can sign up, and we'll give you access.
Fantastic, Dave. Well, listen, great platform, great company, great talk.
Thanks.
Hope to see you at the next Open Data Science Conference in San Francisco.